Here we have the fabled Nintoaster instructional video, which we will watch in its entirety in a moment. Before that, if you are not comfortable with soldering or disassembling expensive components, please be aware that this might not be for you. Please take the Nintoaster to a certified technician if you have any trouble. Of course, we're going to start and go over the usage and maintenance of the Nintoaster and what you should and shouldn't do. Let's start with the basics. On the left side of the toaster, we have a composite video output, left and right audio outputs, and a 9-volt power jack. The toaster should be run using the original or an alternative NES power supply, but a 12-volt power supply could be used in a jam. The right side features a standard Sunbeam toaster plunger, which activates the toaster as a power switch. This locks at the bottom of the stroke and should be lifted to turn the NES toaster off. Below that is an all-important light dial, which will change the amount of light the internal LEDs give off. Flipping it on its side, we see the top panel and cartridge slot. The top panel contains both controller ports and the reset button. The aforementioned LEDs will shine through the polycarbonate so you can see what the hell you're doing at night. The cartridge slot is located just behind that. We'll touch on that in a minute. There are no other NES related components on the exterior, but be aware of the crumb tray located at the bottom of the toaster. If absolutely necessary, crumbs can be stored there. Removing the outside housing of the Nintoaster is not a trivial matter, but is necessary for most maintenance activities. Be cautious of the controller ports and avoid bending the outer steel shell too much. Some wires and components are hot glued to the top of the shell. It may be necessary to re-glue them if disassembling. The jacks on the front of the toaster should never need to be removed, and the controller ports at most will need to be unplugged. Inside, there is one unpopulated toaster slot, which is used for the controller ports and reset switch, while the other is filled with a circuit board, cartridge connector, and polycarbonate shield. The cartridge connector is secured with high-strength epoxy. It should not move during normal operation, and if it does, it will need repair. To prevent a situation like this, be cautious when inserting cartridges and do not forcefully insert them. On that same note, the polycarbonate shield was added to guide the cartridges into the slot. That way, there is no way you will be too drunk to mess something up. On the opposite side of the shield is the main NES board. This motherboard is facing the opposite direction it would in the original Nintoaster, but as I killed the first one while attempting to remove the large expansion port, you'll have to fucking deal with it. The board should never need to be removed, but if it does, make sure no connections on the board are touching the external shell when putting it back together. There should not be much maintenance needed as the Nintoaster ages, but if something starts to loosen, it will need to be re-glued. The most fragile parts are the polycarbonate shield, the controller port mounting bracket, and the cartridge connector. They are all double glued with high-strength epoxy, but the more careful you are with it, the less likely something will have to happen. The controller port bracket is the most worrisome, as most people have the crippling desire to push the controller connector all the way into the port, which is unnecessary, and can cause the strong epoxy to come undone if done very frequently. Now, that doesn't mean you need to be a bitch about it, but don't punch a hole in the console. As the motherboard is on the far side of the console, make sure not to drop it on that side. I don't know why you'd be dropping it in general, but if you are, stop. Finally, as the motherboard is also facing the reverse of the original, make sure all cartridges are facing away from you when inserting a game. Think of it like a claymore and face the game towards the enemy. I understand that is not ideal, and you want to see the game title on the cartridge when it's in the console, but suck it up, I killed an NES before this. And that's all. I hope you learned a lot from this video, and if you have any other questions, please consult the manual or call a certified technician. Thank you.